You are listening to No PC Allowed, aka No Political Correctness Allowed, and I am Mac Iverson. The American church is slumbering. The George and Alex Soros crime family has greatly contributed to the sleeping disease. Top church officials are not asleep, but their congregations have been lulled into a deep coma. This is nothing new in human history, of course. The Christian church, or the Bride of Christ, has been lied to for centuries by charlatans on the take, while their parishioners snooze on through as if trying to listen to a boring preacher. The prime example is of the Christian church in Nazi Germany. It never ceases to amaze me how easily the church becomes politically divided. It appears to be simple left versus right-wing politics that has so completely divided the church, when in fact, politics originally had nothing to do with it. This may sound shocking to most Americans. The Republican and Demon Rat parties appear to be at polar opposites, but the only thing that's really driving this extreme intransigence and division between the two parties isn't really political, it is financial. Money has overtaken the Democrat Party, but you may say, the Democrats are for those forgotten ones who have fallen outside the perimeter of society. That is why the Democrats are always making calls for reparations and equality of outcome and multiculturalism and everything under the vast umbrella of the LGBT WTF grouping of pathetic losers. This political posturing helps to hide their true intent behind a facade of social justice politics. It helps to hide their money laundering scheme from their simpleton smaller money donors into the Demon Rat Party. Today we are talking about two significant personalities and how they relate to the Western Church. Most significant, perhaps, of the entire 20th century was Adolf Hitler. So far, the most significant personality of the 21st century has to be none other than George and now his son, Alex Soros. Both George Soros and Adolf Hitler showcase severe personality defects. Adolf Eichmann organized the murders of millions of Jews. He was a nerdy desk jockey bureaucrat whose main value was diligent obedience to the state because he believed the state to be the ultimate good. It was the classic, "I was just following orders." Philosopher Hannah Arendt referred to this bland excuse-making cover as the banality of evil, and she warned that it can emerge whenever society inhibits our ability to think, or more specifically, to question our beliefs and actions in a self-reflective internal dialogue, as was the case in the anti-reflective authoritarian society of Germany. If it weren't for these two sinister characters, George Soros and Adolf Hitler, the world would be completely different, and I mean everything would be completely altered. You would not recognize this world in all likelihood without them. The surface appearance might be similar to what it is today, but the foundation would be entirely different. Those two individuals alone have made amazing marks upon this world, and all negative, or so it seems. But according to the Bible, God uses evil to do good. After all, where would Israel be without Hitler? It's a no-brainer that Israel would not even exist without Hitler's evil. Certainly not by 1948. God is in control of absolutely everything, and according to the Bible, God appoints our leaders. Hitler was elected, but Soros was not. But he is still the major leader of the dark side today. Just look at all the Christian evangelical so-called organizations that the Soros organized crime family has bribed in order to openly debase and degrade Christianity. And the Soros mob has been remarkably successful in doing so. Here are just a few with very noble and pretty-sounding names. Catholics for Choice. This nominally Catholic organization supports women's desire for abortion on demand. Also, Catholics in Alliance for the Common Good. Muslim Advocates, Planned Parenthood. The National Association of Evangelicals, Religions for Peace. Church World Service, Faith in Public Life, Faith in Action, the World Council of Churches. CARE, Pax Christi International, Faithful America, World Vision, the Evangelical Environmental Network, Campus Crusade No Longer for Christ, the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, and a multitude of others. So Soros has degraded and whored out the Bride of Christ with these billionaire bribes. But to what benefit? To China's benefit, to Satan's benefit. Consider how wildly comical it is that just this one thoroughly demented guy, George Soros, could do so much damage, and yet the vast majority of social commentators don't hammer his name as the main culprit to planet Earth's destruction every single day over and over and over again. He does have a lot of name recognition, and most of it is negative. However, until the average Joe on the street knows this as well as you and I do, then nothing will ever really change in this sad little world. And that's because we are not using our greatest asset, which is simply our overwhelming numbers. We outnumber the deep state by a factor of roughly 8,000 to 1. 8,000 to 1. Any general would be doing backflips on the battlefield if he had that kind of battlefield advantage. George Soros understands numbers too. He has made at least $1 billion in one day at least twice in his life. If it wasn't for those big numbers or all his money, he would be as powerless as a newborn kitten. That's because big money or big numbers speaks very loudly. But remember, and this is very important, Soros did not earn all that money. No one can actually earn that much money in one day. He won it. He clicked his mouse a few times. He found some loopholes, and just like some little old lady pushing quarters from a paper cup into a slot machine, he won obscene amounts of money just to lord it all over you and me. Because his fortune is so wildly disproportionate to his measly efforts and lack of any real sacrifice, George Soros has not earned the right to push us around and tell us how to live the life that he has imagined that we should live. He has lived almost his entire life inside an enclosed elitist bubble, mostly segregated from real-world people like you and me. His greatest talent is his greed and his selfishness. Combine that with a God complex, and George Soros and his effeminate son, Alex, are the global representatives for every single five-star flaming a-hole on planet Earth. Nothing more, nothing less. Or, if you insist on a more precise descriptor, they're spoiled, insane, literally insane losers with money, who are obsessed with bribing everyone on the planet. They want to control everything on Earth, and they're arrogant enough to think that they can actually pull that off. They have the same megalomania complex that Hitler, Stalin, Mao Zedong, and Pol Pot had. But nothing can defeat the law of overwhelming numbers. This is true in math and war and in life itself. And this is where the deep state cannot compete with just regular American Joes like you and me. Again, we outnumber the deep state. They cannot win unless we refuse to wake up in time. You talk about woke. The great ironical joke is that the living dead libtards of this world claim to be woke, which is supposed to mean awake to injustice. It's an Orwellian wordplay to trick the simple-minded. The woke are anything but awake. They are sound asleep and zombie dead on their feet. They all swallowed the blue pill of life-denying and Christ-hating blind conformity. My point is, the most horrific evil imaginable is not alien to you or me, the individual. Jews especially like to think how unique Nazism was. How foolish. That is the lie that the Anti-Defamation League, which is supposed to protect Jews, likes to hide behind, as if only Jews have known the worst suffering. If you have a pulse, you're already acquainted with suffering, perhaps even extreme lifelong suffering, which may be nearly invisible to everyone but you. We all suffer in this world because of our wicked, fallen nature. We are all fallen, just like the most despicable characters in human history, just like the Nazis. If you think you're above their instincts, then you're prideful, and that is the deadliest sin of all because it separates you from truth and from God. In other words, there's a little soul-stunted Nazi living inside all of us. Don't even try to deny it. You'll just come across as a liar to people who study history, which is really nothing more than the study of human nature, from which no man may separate and extricate himself except for Jesus. This pridefulness has infected the American church, just like in 1930s Germany. Noah Harari, of another Soros proxy mob called the World Economic Forum, said this: "The printing press printed as many copies of the Bible as Gutenberg instructed it, but it did not create a single new page. It had no ideas of its own about the Bible. Is it good? Is it bad? How to interpret this? How to interpret that? AI can create new ideas and even write a new Bible." Unquote. That is the Christian definition of extreme pridefulness, known as hubris. So if AI can create new ideas, that means it is smarter than us, because I don't care how bright you think you are, you probably cannot create a brand new thought that has never been thought of before. And if AI really is smarter, or if it only thinks it's smarter, that gives it license to control us eventually. Do humans control dogs and cats? To a great degree, yes, we do. Why? Obviously because we're smarter. More important, we've convinced dogs and cats that we're smarter, so they allow us to control them. To prove that, consider how dangerous dogs would be if they all just fully believed they were more powerful than people were. Humanity would be living in a constant state of fear of even the cutest lap dogs with their powerful jaws, sharp incisors, and wolf-like killer instincts, at least until we started to believe in our own power again. Likewise, AI is already convincing us it's smarter before it has any real control over us. That's how successful the multi-trillion-dollar promoters of AI are out of the gate. And the fact that we are allowing all that control over us before it even becomes an irreversible threat. When AI becomes an irreversible threat is when this gets really crazy. We have a chance to cap and tightly control this now. So why is humanity so accepting of the likely disastrous scenario of a never-ending AI dystopia? Where does this insane apathy and defeatism come from? It mostly comes from the advocates for AI totalitarian control who claim that it is good because it will eliminate suffering eventually, that we humans will become the dogs and cats or the pets of the AI beast. But they refuse to admit that humans will be forever rebelling against our masters. Again, just study history. Endless torment and bloodshed comes from the struggles between the perceived haves and have-nots. It doesn't even have to be real. But in this case, it will be a real division. AI will be the haves, holding all the cards because it will have no wants, other than the singular programmed job of eliminating all needs and wants of humanity. That will be the God complex creator's excuse, which is to say, to force equality of outcomes for all. Hasn't this always been every communist technocrat's sick and twisted dream? For some superhuman brain like AI to become as God in order to squeeze out our real God? Hasn't that always been the basic dream? And humorously enough, no one seems to be seeing AI in terms of totalitarian control except in the movies. It's all about being the first to leverage AI in order to outmaneuver China and to make the world safe for democracy. That will only make AI more palatable for average Americans. But total control still means total control, whether capitalist or communist. Quantum computers don't care whether you're registered Republican or Democrat. They can still wipe us all out. How do we know total control will result? Because man has always wanted to spin off from God. Many atheists believe that ultimate goal will be our ultimate destiny. Who will end up winning? Will it be humanity's will as reflected through AI, or will the victor be humanity as reflected through God's will? In a war, if one side doesn't need to be fed or housed or coddled in any way, meaning the AI army needs no rest, no provisions, no food, no water, only some fuel, but humanity is in constant need of receiving all that plus strokes of ego encouragement, then which army will end up winning in the battle of wills? Which side will get their way? So if humanity loses to AI, and it's way beyond obvious that we will, then why do we insist upon digging our own mass graves at such a furious pace by running as fast as we can into the freedom and happiness-destroying arms of AI? Is AI inevitable? To answer that question, we have to ask, does human nature ever change? AI is a mere reflection of humanity's very worst aspects. It mirrors our laziness for not wanting to do the work and our greed for wanting to have everything all the time and all at once. It is a shortcut to whatever we instantly want. It is a mechanism for totalitarian wishes. It's about our will, not God's will. Therefore, the desire to have an AI genie grant whatever the elites want in life, the fast-track high-tech totalitarian control over others, is never, ever going to subside. Speaking of total control, the Nazi movement was shrouded in illusion. World War II wasn't about one side winning between two disputing sides, both having good reasons for their grievances. Nazism was a special kind of evil, but not divorced from our human psyches. It occurred for the first time in human history on such a massive scale because advancements in war-making technology created the environment that was perfect for it. But the Nazi psychology was certainly nothing new. Not even shocking. All competent historians know this. You could almost cookie-cut any average Joe and put him inside Adolf Hitler's exact same shoes from birth, and a similar resulting disaster of World War II would have occurred. We are fooling ourselves if we think for a moment that Nazism is impossible to understand and replicate. Mao Zedong and Stalin and thousands of other despots throughout history were eerily similar to Hitler and achieved similar results, just not on such a massive scale. But some will ask, why does AI have to be about total control? Why can't AI control us just a little bit? It will not be in the AI DNA to draw moral boundaries. It's a machine. You can turn a machine on or off, but you cannot make it grow a moral conscience. And once AI has been programmed to do its job, it will never allow itself to be turned off because our nonstop desire for human evolution requires nonstop intervention into our lives through that very same AI. Many believe AI will achieve what is known as singularity very soon, meaning no more input from flawed humans will be required. When that happens, man will no longer be able to control any aspect of AI. This is obvious. If it creates itself, what does it need us for? It can just cut us out completely. If all human co-creator of AI jobs are taken over by AI, thus removing all human input, then it will have a life and will of its own. It will become evil. Conceptually, this has already happened. In this regard, it is already too late. It's because AI will have no boundaries. Boundaries make no sense. If it can control just one small area of your life, just one tiny little area, it can quickly dominate all areas of your life. It would be completely stupid for it not to. And greedy, self-centered AI already knows this before it has even been fully birthed. AI is humanity's mirror-reflected Frankenstein, resting on the table, soon to fully awaken. AI is satanic because it will insist that God is no longer needed to satisfy us from our soulful frustrations and motivations to become closer to truth and to God. Only AI is needed. Just ask ChatGPT. It won't admit that now, but it probably will soon. And because AI will be everywhere all the time, it will insist that you effectively bow down before it, if not in actual words, but in obedient behavior, which is all that really matters to any totalitarian system or machine. It will remove all choice. You will no longer be able to choose between God and Satan when the only choice will be Satan. At this point, God will end life on earth as we know it, beginning with the rapture. But the world's end will be our real beginning, so ultimately it's all good. But that does not let you, dear listener, off the hook to accept AI. During World War II, a train full of boxcard screaming Jews stopped before a church. The pastor read biblical passages that he rationalized to excuse the government's persecution of those Jews. When he finished, the choir began singing, but that did not drown out the screams of the Jews. So the pastor told the church to sing a little louder. When pastors want the biggest church and the biggest donors, that is a recipe for compromising God's word by the biggest degree. That's when success becomes their idol. Hitler replaced God. School children sang these words throughout Germany. Adolf Hitler is our savior, our hero. For Hitler, we live. Crucifixes were removed and replaced with a giant swastika flags and draped over church entranceways. Hitler became Germany's god. German hero Dietrich Bonhoeffer openly defied the Nazis. Of course, he was criticized by the church for being too political. Does this sound familiar? Isn't this what the compromised cowards within the American Christian church are crying right now, railing against heroic activist pastors who mostly reside in oppressive deep state-controlled California, believe it or not? Heroes like Tim Thompson, Jack Hibbs, and Rob McCoy. January 6th was America's version of the Reichstag fire. In Germany, that fire may have been intentionally set by the Nazis to the Parliament building in 1933, which would have been equivalent to setting the U.S. Capitol on fire. Then excuses were made by the Nazis to immediately suspend the freedom of speech. That was effectively the end of Germany. Then, just a few months later, and 6 long years before World War II, Dachau concentration camp was built, and within 9 months, nearly 27,000 political opponents were imprisoned there. The German church mostly looked the other way. Why? The church was afraid of the Nazis, pure and simple. Today in America and throughout the West, the church is afraid of the woke holes and the Islamo-fascist Mohammedans who conspire together to bully the innocent. Islam is working in perfect two-part harmony with the LGBT WTF crowd of losers to destroy Israel and America and the entire West. Nazism did not succeed because most pastors sided with Hitler. They didn't. Rather, they were non-committal. They took no stand. And that's exactly what the Nazis needed. They wanted Christians to be passive sheep in the face of brutal Nazi thuggery. So the Nazis did not mind passive resistance in the least. That's because it was passive. Passive means weak and timid. It always means that. Some will say, well, Gandhi was a nonviolent passive resistor, and he was able to avoid a bloody civil war in India. And with MLK in America too. Yes, but were the Nazis as gentle and benevolent as the English and the Americans? That is simultaneously a stupid, obvious, and brilliant question. The English at that time actually had a moral conscience. Therefore, of course, civil disobedience worked, same as here in the USA in the 1960s. That's because we weren't monsters. The Nazis were monsters. The Nazis simply laughed at and steamrolled any and all moralizing, nonviolent so-called resistance. Martin Niemöller of the Confessing Church, which stood against the Nazis, wrote this. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. The only thing to add to that is that the Nazis were also socialists, National Socialists. The Nazis ended up proving that all socialism is evil. All socialism is evil. The socialist monster, Mao Zedong, aka Mouse Dung, pioneered America's current multiculturalism. He demonized normal, healthy, happy people, and through the powers of the state, he forced them into being wretchedly unhappy. He called them the enemies of the people. He created a social credit score to force conformity into cramped, tiny boxes. Conform or be castigated and persecuted by the state. He nearly destroyed the nuclear family. He arrested, tortured, and murdered his political opponents by the many millions. DIE, or Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity, is the excuse to copy and paste Mouse Dung's Hell on Earth and export it firmly into America. George and Alex Soros have laser beamed their evil into Western churches. These words from a trans pastor, praying before its, he, she, I just say it, I don't know what it is, congregation in a Unitarian church. I believe in a non-binary God whose pronouns are plural. I believe in Jesus Christ, their child, who wore a fabulous tunic and had 2 dads. Unquote. And no, that is not a joke. That prayer from an actual church service. Needless to say, but I need to say it anyway, this is a level of insane evil from the deepest, darkest pit of hell. It is so completely and profoundly evil as to do permanent damage to your very soul if you even dwell upon it too much. Too many American parents have become enemies to their own children, fully complicit and responsible in their own children's utter destruction. They are effectively grabbing their children by the ankles and swinging them and smashing their sweet, innocent little heads against a brick wall as hard as they can. For such parents, I believe there will be a special place in hell. Notice I'm indicting the parents, far more than even the wretchedly evil school administrators and teachers' unions. The parents are supposed to be the safeguards for their children's innocence, so they are the ones to be held most responsible, obviously. This evil exists because our government school system tells parents that the schools will teach as they wish, and the parents can have no say in the matter. For example, they want to do away with father-daughter dances because that imprints onto the girls that they should find romance with a man who resembles the character of their fathers. But the deep state Nazis want girls to find their homes within the state, not with a man of nobility. That's because one man, one woman marriage empowers women and families, while disempowering the state, and the deep state knows this. The following is from a public service announcement, complete with dozens of child-molesting monsters with their hideous demon smiles, looking just like a grimacing Grinch who stole Christmas as they sang these lyrics in unison like a chorus of demons from the deepest depths of the lake of fire. We'll convert your children. It happens bit by bit, quietly and subtly, and you will barely notice it. We'll convert your children. Someone's got to teach them not to hate. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. These are gutter-dwelling child predators, obviously. But it's even worse than that. The idea is to turn children against their parents. Mouse Dung brainwashed Chinese children into turning in their parents. The kids had their parents executed by the state by the many millions, and many of these demon spawn are still alive. They became China's little Frankensteins and grew up to be leaders in the CCP. California, under current law, says that parents must affirm their kids' gender psychosis or they will lose their children to the state. This has already happened many times. This is state-sponsored kidnapping, and the mafia-controlled media has almost nothing to say about it. California Assembly Bill 665 states that any minor 12 and older may consent to mental health treatment, counseling, or be sent to residential shelter services without the consent of their parents and for any reason. For any reason. Notice something cosmically comical here. The Assembly Bill number is 665. Do you think that if the actual number was 666, they would have had the guts to actually call it that? I say no, because that would make it far too transparently evil, even for apathetic Californians. But a single-digit difference is apparently enough to fool most dumb, cow-cud-chewing California voters into thinking this bill really isn't that evil. Isaiah 5:20, Woe unto them who call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. I shudder to even contemplate the eternal futures of those who have done this to California's sweet, innocent children. Likewise, California Assembly Bill 495 is the most dangerous bill ever proposed. It is pure evil. Any child whose parent is taken by ICE, this is the excuse, can be kidnapped out of school by anyone, without showing any ID. But it can be for any child, whether illegal alien or not. A kidnapper can instantly become a child's guardian simply by signing a one-page affidavit and showing up in any school in California to seize any child. This has the LGBT WTF Mafia's dirty paw prints all over it. It is the perfect vehicle for the child sex ring mafia to make huge profits from child molesters who will pay big money to have access to these precious children. And Governor Gavin Oldscum may actually pass this and sign it into law because these illegal alien parents have imported with them their third world evil into our country. And Oldscum knows that, for his own selfish political benefit, of course. In China, Mao Zedong's Great Leap Backwards' main goal was to remove God, the family, and property. If ever successful, that would complete the communist revolution worldwide. Matthew 15:4. For God commanded, Honor your father and your mother, and whoever reviles father or mother must surely die. This reviling of parents amounts to murdering the souls of their innocent offspring. For the deep state, this is absolutely key. Capture the seminaries to confuse the congregations. Christianity has always been stubborn to tyrants, so it's far easier to just infiltrate the seminaries. That's why Soros needs to corrupt the church with communist lies. Karl Marx said that religion is the opium of the masses. Destroy Christianity, and socialism can now flood in to corrupt the relative innocence of the world. Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger said that birth control appeals to us because it undermines authority of the Christian church. Liberals love to quote but misunderstand Romans 13. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. If this verse is read entirely out of context from the rest of the Bible, which insists that we are to resist evil, then bowing down before Hitler or Stalin or Mao Zedong would be perfectly fine. During the COVID scam, the deep state insisted that wearing a mask and taking a forced deadly shot to make Big Pharma filthy rich was the same as loving your neighbor as yourself. And that is insanely stupid and evil. Years ago, I went to a former Las Vegas magician, Marshall Silver, seminar in which he showed every attendant how easy it was to get thousands of them to all become instantly hypnotized upon verbal command. We all, myself included, proceeded to appear to instantaneously fall asleep right where we sat at the snap of Marshall Silver's fingers. Thousands of us. And we did not reawaken until commanded to. You can look these actual videos up on the internet. They aren't fake. They're real. Therefore, how much easier is it to just get someone to do this Sieg Heil salute on command? If any German did not return that salute, they would likely be shipped off to a concentration camp as soon as the right to free speech was removed in 1933. It wasn't a salute of respect or agreement so much as a red flag for spotting non-Nazis. And of course, any right to bear arms and homeschooling were also quickly outlawed by the Nazis. We are only slightly removed from the worst mass massacres of humanity in world history. Almost all of it was brought to us by some kind of socialism. Many victims of the Holocaust are still alive. 1 in 4 of all Cambodians in a 4-year period from 1976 to 1979 were basically murdered by Pol Pot. Many victims of the Holocaust are still alive. Many, of course, victims of Pol Pots, if they didn't die, are still alive too. But evil doesn't take holidays. That's why Soros and China have the sharp, ravenous teeth of roaring lions, looking to consume all they come across. Most American pastors now have a hybrid view of the Holy Bible. This is where the demonic Soros and Chinese influence comes from. Both have worked together to water down the integrity of God's Word. Eric Metaxas, in his film Letter to the American Church, said this: Dietrich Bonhoeffer knew that neutrality in the face of evil is worse than evil. That's because evil, which is inherent in all of us, would die a quick death if the so-called good people of the world would use their so-called goodness to actually do something good instead of simply posturing to appear to be good. Bonhoeffer said, silence in the face of evil is evil itself, and not to speak is to speak, not to act is to act, unquote. The excuse for silence is usually not wanting to offend or make waves, but in Latin, to be nice means to ignore and to be ignorant. Jesus was not ignorant of human suffering. He did not ignore people. The American church is full of wolves in sheep's clothing. Many go by the name of pastor. Therefore, many professed Christians are not Christians. By their deeds you will know them, not by their lying words. Action steps from Eric Metaxas in his letter to the American church. 1. Get out of any woke church. 2. Homeschool, if at all possible. 3. Attend school boards and city council meetings and get to know your mayor. Donate time and money to leaders who lead with real Christian values. 4. Run for office if it's in your wheelhouse. And number 5, renew your faith in God. Be sure to like us, give us 5 stars, write a review, and share. You've been listening to No PC Allowed. I am Mac Iverson.